Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Beyer from GAI Insights, and welcome to our daily executive briefing where we discuss and rate top news items. Our team of AI analysts rate each item as essential, important, or optional for executives and AI leaders at companies. Today's briefing is sponsored by GAI Insights, and Tim will lead the discussion.
Morning, everybody. Second to last day of news for, well, not quite, soon, close to the last day of news for this year. Ankash, can you bring up the first article, please?
I think it's the penultimate day.
What is it, John?
The penultimate day.
Penultimate day, unless we count New Year's Eve. Is New Year's Eve Sunday? Oh, no, you're right. It is penultimate day. Yep. Ankash?
Sure, I'm just sharing my screen.
Good morning, Michael. Long-time regular listener commenting online. Ankash, I don't see your screen yet.
Yeah, it should be up now, Paul, in just a few seconds.
All right.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
You see it.
Oh, okay, great. So thanks, Tim. The first news item that we have for today is from New York Times. So New York Times wants OpenAI and Microsoft to pay for training data. So this is the news of the moment on Twitter, at least. Everybody is talking about this.
Okay. So, John, you want to open us up on this one?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I think it's a negotiation ploy, and they're sure. Of course, they wanted to pay for it. The lawsuit's part of that, and they're just trying to get a higher price. They're going to do a deal. I think it's optional.
Amanda, have you read this one?
Yeah, and I'm still a little confused as to exactly what's going on here when I heard this last night, because, I mean, isn't this exactly what ChatGPT does, pull from the internet? So I'm not sure exactly what I'm missing. I mean, I understand they have a copyright, but if somehow it's pulling from behind like paywalls or something like that, again, I'm not clear exactly what's going on here. So I'm not sure exactly what this lawsuit is. If it's pulling from the internet, we kind of know that. I'm a little bit lost. So yeah, I think I'm kind of like optional as well on this one.
Adam, Paul, any other comments?
Same.
I'm on the other side. This is still lawsuits. This is I'm on the essential, if not important. I mean, this is my understanding. This is New York Times catching up with Getty's, having a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit against OpenAI for using copyright infringement, and that the lawyers will try to prove damages, and damages are financial harm that New York Times got, and they're going to argue that not only did OpenAI cause them harm, less sales of subscriptions, but also Coca-Cola and anyone else who benefited from this stuff. So I think the lawyer will at least try to sue a lot of people with big, deep pockets. And therefore, for our AI leaders, you need to understand and go with solutions like Azure and others that at least provide some identification against these lawsuits.
Yep, that's the one important point, is that this is where indemnification really counts. I think I'm sort of on the optional. I could be talked into important, and I'm with John. I think this is mostly a negotiating ploy. If they win, of course, that's a financial settlement, but that's what the deal is too. It's some sort of financial arrangement. There is the only thing that gets important here, and I just think it's too early, is we've said for a long time, the courts are going to make important rulings here about what can be done and what can't be done. That is, there are people all over the map from the law community on which way that's going to go. And that will be important, but that's going to take a long time. Lots of these suits, they're going to get appealed, probably end up at the Supreme Court. And then those rulings will be essential to pay attention to, because that's going to be the roadmap for how these issues get settled about business models and training data and all that kind of stuff and fair use. But right now, it's pretty early.
Right. And I also think I think from the courts, they're going to do two things. Either going to have an injunction to stop it, which is not going. Well, I don't know where this balloon's coming up, which is And they're not going to do that, or they're going to figure out. I mean, I don't think there's any dispute that there's some infringement here. I think the only question is damages, and does it take 2 years or 20 years to get through the courts?
Oh, I disagree. I don't know. I'm again, there is a complicated situation here for sure, because just as the internet destroyed the classified news business for print papers, this clearly has harm to the business model. The question is whether it's illegal or not is entirely different, because the New York Times is available in many libraries for free. You just have to go to the library, and the library pays a subscription. What's the difference? If OpenAI pays a subscription, then it's fair use. That's the argument on the other
Well,
side.
no, I thought the fair use was for my own use, not for my own commercial use.
No, it's fair use as long as you don't use it directly. In other words, if you reprint a New York Times article from behind their paywall and make money selling advertisement against that reprint, that's illegal if you don't have an agreement with the New York Times. But we all, let's not say we all, but many of us, I read the New York Times, and I'm going to be influenced in my opinions and thinking by what I read on the New York Times. And I may even offer a quote here and there. Hey, I read this in the Times about their suit. That's not illegal. There's no infringement on my part, because part of my knowledge base is based on the licensed material I consumed. So that's fair use. And that is, it's complicated because humans are limited in scale in what they can consume, whereas the robots are not. That's the real difference here. So it does change the game. And the question is, what's the legal ruling going to be about? Do the mechanics change the legality of what happens? And that is going to have to be settled, but it's not a long ways from being settled.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael points out in the comments that the library has paid license. Not that great an analogy. I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, I think what's going to happen is that we're going to have a really hard time defining what fair use is in the context.
You're breaking up a little bit, John. You need to maybe move forward a bit.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a big new discussion about what fair use is and what agency is in the context of AI, right? Because let's say that I've got 2/3 of my stuff is open, open to the world, and 1/3 is behind a paywall. But essentially, you're inducing the nature of argument, fundamental constructs and so forth from the free stuff that then impinges on the paid stuff, and then it starts to write things with it or generate things from it. The law is super unclear on both those points. What is what's the derivative implications of fair use, and what is agency in the context of this stuff? So I think it's a mess.
Exactly.
The optional is that I think everybody who's running one of these things know they have to keep an eye on it. This to me is not that big, new news. Yeah.
Okay, Paul, can you live with optional?
I can't sold. It's good. It's great clickbait as well. From a
right. Okay. Next, Pankaj.
Okay, the next one is from NEC. So NEC, they have unveiled an AI strategy. And I think the key part of the article is around the new model that they are planning to launch, which will be a 100 billion parameters model, and that they plan to have a sale of approximately 50 billion yen from its GenAI related business in the next 3 years.
Adam, did you take a look at this one?
Yeah. I rated it as optional. I think it's an interesting direction they're going in terms of the architecture with the models. It's something we'll probably see more of. People specifically within those markets that do business with NEC, it's probably important, if not essential to understand. But generally speaking, I consider it optional news.
Other comments?
Yeah, in the words of Paul Beyer, this is a Barney. It's like, okay, this is our intent. 50 billion yen, by the way, remember, is like $300 million 3 years from now for NEC. That's not that big a business for them. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the cool thing in the middle of it's a point we made a bunch of times, which is that, they think there's real value to smaller models, localized models in with
Right.
kanji, and their kanji window is 3 times as big as the current kanji window, and they are making claims that it is way more accurate and so forth. But to me, it's a architecture announcement and intent.
Yep, I agree. The interesting thing is, again, pushing of these models to the edge, and NEC, does a lot of industrial equipment and other kinds of things. So it's interesting reading, but optional.
I also want to note, Tim and others, they use the term lightweight large language models, which I don't
Yeah.
think I've seen before. Is that, I'm assuming in my mind that's equivalent of small. But
Yeah. It's like jumbo shrimp, right?
Yep. Lightweight large language.
Yeah.
I mean, what's implicit in it, at least I read into it, is that by their categorization, and they didn't say it explicitly, reasoning and so forth. I think we're going to see hybrid models, right? Some symbolic, some, neural network, and that this is a step in that direction without saying it.
Yeah. Okay. Optional.
Yep.
Next.
Okay, the next one is from ByteDance. So they have announced a new model called Diff Portrait 3D. So it's a conditional diffusion model that can create photorealistic 3D consistent views from a single portrait.
So, Paul, I read this one as a nothing burger because there's already people who do this. There's several companies that will take 2D representations and turn them into 3D, and I think ByteDance just has better PR. Does that make sense? Optional. Any argument with optional?
No, agreed.
Okay, next.
Okay, the next one is more of a summarizations of how generative AI was leveraged by different restaurants in 2023, whether it was McDonald's or Wendy's, who started using GenAI.
So I'll venture an opinion that this actually is important not because of any particular item, but because of the breadth of activity in production of intense operational activities, which retail restaurants represent in spades. If you're running a restaurant, you are in operations 24/7, and we're also talking about some of the largest restaurant operations in the world: McDonald's, Wendy's, and others. And the breadth of things that they cited, Open Table, these are major brands with hundreds of millions or billions of customers that are deploying large language models, at scale, at least at some level of scale already. So I thought that was important just from a market advancement state.
Tim, I'll go one further and say, like, if you think about within the second half of December, how many essential articles we've had, there actually haven't been that many. And if someone wants to go back and look at the essential news, this is so dense. It's a very good use of their time. It gives so many use cases. It gives a very good picture of the landscape of how quickly, for the right use cases, there's high value, and these companies are really seeing this and moving quickly. I would consider calling it essential. If you're going to read any of the news, perhaps from December, this is a really great roll-up.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I'll double Adams for the following reasons. I think we've certainly seen a lot of examples of using GenAI to get high dollar savings from knowledge workers. I think this is a really good example of also getting low dollar. So these restaurants have such high turnover of minimum wage jobs. Be able to reduce the number of hours they have to pay for constant retraining is very real.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there for essential. And the other pick on this thing is you probably should go get some weapons, because this is going to be a problem societally. When you just obliterate this class of worker.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
Yep. Amanda, you okay with this? Essential?
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well. It just, I feel like it comes down to, again, these are different use cases. So it also depends on if you're a business that works with this type of technology, just like we had virtual try on. So, either way, it could be cool to read. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, essential. Next.
Okay, the next one is similar to the restaurants ones. This is from the beauty industry. So it has some examples on how AI or GenAI has been used in the last year by different brands.
Yep. Similar article here. And again, I was not aware of how much it was being used in another high-end retail experience. I don't know. This has less use cases and they're less in production. So maybe I'd say important, but I think another good indication that it's surprising how fast things are moving into production. What do you think, Paul?
I agree, and I'd like the emphasis, Tim, on production. I think that's the real big dividing line here. And as John's noted before, these are big brands, elephants dancing, and going into production, all within 10 months of first hearing about GenAI and ChatGPT. It's
and again, the switch to engagement as a real mechanism. I think everybody talks about engagement in the marketing consumer experience world, and it's my personal opinion, mostly marketing hype. Google search is not engaging. It's effective, but it's not engaging. And a lot of the engagement stuff is more about how do I increase dwell time on my site. If you read this article, they've got a sunscreen brand that isn't even trying to sell their brand. It's just answering questions about sunscreen. That is engagement, right? How often do I need to put it on? What does a UV rating mean? All that kind of stuff. That's how you engage consumers in a much deeper way and attach them to your brand.
And I think, Tim, that's one thing that covers both these, that kind of language engagement. So language engagement at low cost when I do an order at McDonald's, language engagement when I've got questions on my skincare product.
Yep. Any other comments?
One thing I think is interesting also is it says right in there boldly that employees talks about the market research and how they still need to cross-check all the facts that come out of it. So I think it's kind of just a reminder out there that, unless you build some kind of solution on top of it to look for hallucinations and all that good stuff,
Yep.
it's still not necessarily ready to go on its own, right? So it's just like a little reminder thrown in there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, important. Okay, next.
Okay, the next one is more of a prediction from a Chinese VC who is suggesting that there will be a shakeout in China's AI sector.
John, you have a thought on this?
Optional. Come on, a VC's hedging his bets on downside. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the sun's going to come up today.
I
Whatever.
love Paul's rating paddle there.
Great.
Okay, anybody for anything but optional on this? Okay, optional it is. That's the last one on Kaj?
Yes, Tim.
All right, thanks very much. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tim. Great job. And Michael online, thanks for all the wonderful comments. And we will see everyone tomorrow for our last one of 2023, which has been one heck of a GenAI year.